Dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second day of the AIFC Law Conference 2020, which is hosted under the umbrella of the Astana Finance Days. My name is Jan Kachev. I'm your host for this event. Now, with no further ado, please welcome David Gallo, Director of the AIFC Academy of Law and the moderator of this panel session. David, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jan. Welcome to all of you joining us today at the AIFC Law Conference. We thank Seven Pillars Law for sponsoring this session. Seven Pillars redefines law and is a proud participant in the AIFC. I'm pleased to moderate a discussion on the future of legal education presented by the Academy of Law. The Academy focuses on preparing lawyers for international commercial law practice. Our approach is consistent with the Kazakhstan government's vision of investing in human capital and establishing a knowledge-based economy. With the globalization of trade and the rise of sophisticated cross-border transactions, the practice of law has become increasingly complex. The emergence of the AIFC as an international financial center requires lawyers to have knowledge and skills in the common law and civil law traditions and an appreciation for international law, comparative law principles, geopolitical sensitivity, and public policy. Legal education must keep pace. Today, we have three distinguished speakers at the cutting edge of legal education. Each speaker will give an individual presentation, and then we will move to a panel discussion. Our speakers are Sarah Hutchinson, Managing Director of BARBRI, who will discuss legal education and developing lawyering skills without classrooms. That's not possible. The next speaker is Miras Daulenov, Kazakhstan's Vice Minister of Education and Science. Miras will address legal education in Kazakhstan, status quo, and forthcoming developments. Then Hussain Hadi, Head of Middle East Publishing for Lexis Nexis, will talk about legal tech skills, identifying education gaps and opportunities. If we have time at the end of the event, we will hold a short Q&A session. Please write your questions using the chat function, and we will attempt to address them. With that, let me turn the floor to Sarah Hutchinson.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, David. Thank you for your kind introduction, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this very prestigious and important event. I am delighted to be here. Thank you. Just a little bit of background. David has given me a very kind introduction, but my name is Sarah Hutchinson. I am a solicitor in England and Wales, and I am also the managing director of a global legal education company called BARBRI. In my spare time, I'm very involved in the International Bar Association, and I am on the management board of the International Bar Association, where I chair one of the sections. I wanted to just give you a very short presentation, and I hope that my joke translates well into local languages. Of course, it is possible to develop legal education and legal skills without a classroom, and I just thought I'd give a very quick presentation. I'm going to share my screen now to show how we have managed to do that. First of all, in terms of rethinking legal education and lawyer development skills, well, why has that been necessary? And the starting point is that, quite ignoring the current circumstances, the current difficult circumstances we have had over the last few months because of the coronavirus, in fact, the development of legal education goes back much further. If you think about the way in which business is conducted, the way in which our negotiations take place, the way in which legal communication takes place, so much of it is now driven through our desktops, through our computers. And therefore, legal education has kept pace with that development. And we've been able to think about not just about how we have to develop the skills of being a lawyer, so much of which are dependent upon our ability to communicate effectively online, but actually also using the best of technology to make a more effective legal education environment. I'm also going to deal with some of the results that we've seen, both in terms of student satisfaction and exam results. And then I'm just going to very briefly give you a couple of minutes thinking about the longer term impact for legal education and, of course, the important routes to qualification. Sorry, I'm just going to flick back. If I start with the basics of legal education, when we're thinking about the basics of legal education, there are three key components. The first is that a student needs to acquire legal knowledge. And obviously without legal knowledge, we are not lawyers. So the ability to understand, to acquire, to have honed and to have really embedded key legal principles, key legal facts is absolutely crucial. And that hasn't changed for hundreds of years. So that is still the key component of how you acquire legal education, legal knowledge. But of course, importantly, you can't just acquire that knowledge, you have to be able to apply it. And that's where your lawyer skills comes in. How can you apply your knowledge to a given client's circumstances, to a given transaction? And then, of course, from an education perspective, how do we assess it? So let's just quickly unpick those three components. In terms of acquisition, well, from BARBRI's perspective, where we've really started to focus the acquisition stage is by appointing expert subject matter academics, but also blending that with practitioner. And I think Hussain is going to deal with that when he comes on to looking at his session in terms of plugging those gaps. I think there has been a gap over hundreds of years, really, millennia, between what happens in university and what happens in practice. Well, we've started to plug that gap by bringing together the best of academics with the best of practitioners. So the four pictures you can see on the screen here are pre-recorded lectures given by, two of whom are given by very prestigious English UK academics from high-profile universities, but the two at the bottom are in fact practitioners. These are leading practitioners who give lectures to our students. You can see that we've captured these masterclasses, we call them, from practitioners, and then we embed them into the learning. So the learning, the knowledge stage, what would typically have been delivered by way of a lecture is now delivered by way of online lectures, where we blend together the best of academics with practitioners. Sorry, I'm clicking through too quickly here. Let me just go back. Once you've got the knowledge, once you've got to the stage where somebody has read the textbooks, they've listened to the lectures, what do you want to next do? You want them to learn how to apply that knowledge. And here is how you can do so using technology. What we've done here is that we embed at the next stage of development, we embed some test your own understanding stages. So what we're doing here is we're giving the students the opportunity to understand what they've read and then to apply it. So here you can see in relation to constitutional law, we've given the students a short scenario, a short set of facts, and then we've asked them to apply it to their knowledge. So we've asked them to check that they've understood by selecting the correct answer. I know that people think multiple choice questions are easy. They're not. Multiple choice questions that are written well are very testing. So I don't expect you to be able to read that on screen in such a short space of time. But in fact, all 5 of those answers are plausible. They're all realistic. And so making that very nuanced judgment between the 5 answers is actually quite a sophisticated task. Of course, it's important that when you're giving the answers, you don't just give the correct answer. You have to explain why one is correct, why one is incorrect. And it's very important for the students to understand why questions are right and wrong. In fact, if anything, that's part of the knowledge acquisition. Once we've gone beyond knowledge acquisition and we've assessed, we're looking at assessment, we then start to think about other issues about how we start to develop the lawyer. So what we've got here is an example of how somebody might then be mentored through a program. So here we have a typical BARBRI student who is in fact working with her mentor to give her some one-to-one skills development. And I think that's very important, that you have the human touch coupled with, of course, the knowledge acquisition. So it's very much a personalised approach to tutoring, very much mirrors what's happening in the office. And you can see here that 100% of our course participants highly rated their mentor. So they're very, very happy about what they're seeing in terms of that one-to-one relationship with their tutor. So it's gone beyond the classroom now into a mentoring relationship in terms of skills development. Not just thinking about verbal skills, the ability to communicate effectively on a one-to-one basis, but of course, a key component of learning how to be a lawyer is the ability to learn how to write. And written communication is an absolute given in any form of legal practice. So how do we develop written skills and how do we use technology to help students develop their abilities to write better, faster? That's our mantra. How do you write better, faster? And you can see here that we have got identify an issue and key facts. So the first stage of lawyering, of course, is to work out what the legal issue is and then to work out what the key facts are. And you can see here that what we're using is, again, we're using the best of technology to ask a student to highlight in the passage what they think the key aspect ought to be. So where is the free speech clause? Show me the speech and debate clause. So we're asking them to identify key issues in the passage that we've given them. We can also do something around fill in the blanks. So for example, here, we might give a student a set of written work and then ask them to fill in the gaps. We might also ask them to, we might then give them immediate responses because of course a key important part of development is the feedback stage. Of course, it's not just about filling the blanks. You can also use drag and drop facilities to write better, faster. And again, you want to see immediate results there. So we've got feedback. So in terms of what that looks like, and David asked me just to feed back in terms of how these learning programs, these online learning programs are succeeding. Well, at the moment, 90% of our students are graduating through the bar exams. So we're getting a success rate of 90%. Which compared with the national average is about 75%, so we're significantly higher there. And we've just applied this methodology in the UK, where we had an 83% test success rate in 2019. The national average in the UK is 51%. So again, it's having a very high correlation to not just developing the students and getting high success rates in terms of student satisfaction, but also in terms of exam results. The final thing I just wanted to talk about a little bit is the ability of a student to, where do I see this going forward? Where do I see technology taking us in legal education in the future? Well, I think the coronavirus has driven universities to really think carefully about online education, how to do it well, and not just how to do it well, but also how to assess well. And for me, David, in terms of the future, I see the future being in relation to the blend between the personalised approach to teaching, very much about developing the individual skills, using technology to develop the legal knowledge skills. So that's my top tip for the future. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Sarah. Let me turn the floor over to Miras Daulenov. Miras?
Hi, David. Thank you for the invitation to take part in this conference. I would like to share with you and with the audience vision on the Ministry of Education and Science in respect of the legal education status quo and forthcoming developments. Just a sec. So this is my presentation. So as a Vice Minister of Education and Science of the Republic of Kazakhstan and former provost one of the law university in Kazakhstan, I'm glad to participate in today's discussion. Law is one of the main instruments of change that may ensure democracy and justice in society. And in the case of bad regulation, of course, we do understand that may create immense barriers for social and economic development. The welfare of society depends on the quality of legal system, and the quality of legal system depends on professionals who work in this field. Today, I would like to introduce the system of legal education in Kazakhstan, share the achievements of Kazakhstan institutions, and discuss the challenges that we face. So, I would like to start my presentation with some overview of the system of legal education in Kazakhstan. Probably some of you are not familiar with the system, with the legal education in Kazakhstan, and I want to explain then it briefly. Education institutions of Kazakhstan deliver education programs on 3 levels. Bachelor level, which takes normally 4 years. However, in state regulations, we have no restrictions for that. So it means that a student can take for 240 academic credits, ECTS, for 3 years and complete his study. But normally, a university in Kazakhstan offer 4 years of study and the bachelor level. But the master level, which takes 1 year for the students who want to become legal professionals, and 2 years for those who pursue not only practicing law, but teach the law and conduct research. So, and of course, we have PhD in law, study for 3 years. Currently, there are 71 education institutions which training professionals in different fields of law. Generally, we have 131 education institutions in Kazakhstan on a higher education level. And among them, 71 institutions teach the law. And these 71 institutions have more than 10,000 graduates each year. The overall number of citizens who have law degree is 400,000. Just to remind that in Kazakhstan, we have 70 million people and 400,000 of them have law degrees. Starting from 2021, the legal profession in Kazakhstan becomes regulated. That means that universal standards will be applied to all legal professions across the country. It means that from the next year, so it will be not enough to have just bachelor law. Of course, it will be required to pass bar exam. The problem in this context is the following. So the issue that in Kazakhstan we have different legal professions. This is not just a lawyer. Of course, we have barristers, we have solicitors, and some of them can represent clients in courts. And during 25 years of the regulations of the legal profession in Kazakhstan, the standards of the regulations have become really different. So it means that for the barrister, of course, it's enough to have a bachelor degree, but on the other hand, they need to pass a bar exam for now. But for solicitors, it's not required to pass any exams for now. It means that for solicitors, for lawyers who just practice in a private law firms or represent clients in private lawsuits, they don't require for now any trainings and don't require for now any exams. In 2000, next slide. In 2019-20 academic year, more than 64,000 people were studying law at the University of Kazakhstan. Most of them did their bachelor degree programs, 61,000. And we have 2,600 master students and only 265 students doing PhD. Of course, this is not enough, so that's why we promote PhD. However, we do agree with some experts that for PhD students, we need to have sufficient number of PhD holders. So as you remember, Kazakhstan have the split system of the scientific degrees. So we have, for now, PhD, but we used to have candidates for science and doctor of science, of law science. So it means that for PhD students, this year we introduced new regulation that required for the from the supervisors of the PhD students to have publications in international journals with impact factor and with high rates of the citing. So it means that if we require this point from the PhD students, we do need to require it from the supervisors. More than 21,000 students successfully graduated from their universities in a given academic year, so this currently year. So it means that 19,000 with bachelor degree, 2,500 with master degree, and 71 successfully defended their PhD thesis in different areas of law. And less than 10% of students get state scholarship. And this demonstrates that legal profession in Kazakhstan is highly demanded, and there are a lot of applicants willing to pay for studying law programs. So why we actually, for bachelor, for instance, spend only 100 scholarships, state scholarships. So we do believe that if students, they able to pay for their education, so they don't need to get scholarships from the country. So we promote, of course, other than law professions. So it means that IT, so medicine and agriculture. So that's why we do understand that for these students, we need to give more scholarship because they not able to pay for their study. So that's why in this context, the current situation in Kazakhstan looks like that. On average, more than 50,000 students are admitted to law degree programs annually. Of course, most of them just pay for themselves for legal education. And for the past 3 years, the employment rate was higher than 60%. Of course, we do understand that this is not enough because this is the average rate, and we have universities which actually do not meet this requirement. And we have universities with more than 90% of the employment rate. But of course, in this context, now we're working to return their licenses to the higher education in the field of law, and to promote not to actually teach law if they have no facilities to do so. So 71 universities in Kazakhstan, if you compare with other countries, so some of you can say that this is not a big number, because for instance, in the United States, we have a lot of more than thousands of universities teaching law. So this is so in each state, I guess we have more than 10 and sometimes more than 100, for instance, like in California. But on the other hand, so if you compare with number of citizens in Kazakhstan, if you compare with number of good teachers in Kazakhstan who can teach really law, and with the number of with the employment rate, so we can say that we have enough institutions which teach law. But on the other hand, we promote to increase the quality of education in this context. According to the World Bank Group publication Doing Business 2020, that compare business regulations in 190 countries, legal system has a tremendous effect on business activity. Effective course, proper system of contract enforcement, adequate government regulations on construction permits, and system where minority investors are protected significantly is doing business in a country and benefits all economic agents. In order to ensure continuous economic development, Kazakhstan must ensure the development of all fields of law, and competitiveness of law schools graduates must cover the demand of the market. This is one of the prime aim of the ministry, and I believe that the whole education institutions, education system in Kazakhstan. Now we'd like to talk about the recent developments in the sphere of Kazakhstan legal education. Leading universities deliver a number of innovation education programs. This is not just bachelor in law, but we have international law. And if we compare with the other countries where international law is given on a master level, normally on master level, so we have international law on bachelor level as well. We have ELSA Digital Forensics. This is a quite new program for Kazakhstan, but we have some university in Kazakhstan which offer digital forensics as well. And currently we have special programs in the Ministry of Justice in training of digital forensic experts. And cryptology for us is one of the ELSA interesting area to develop. To ensure that market demands are met, they cooperate with government agencies, for instance, Ministry of Justice, employers, and professional communities of lawyers, and involve them in the design of the educational programs. And we believe that we need to continue to this practice. So we believe that professionals, they need to be involved in the training of lawyers as from the first year of study. So it means that it's not possible for students to understand the system of law if system of law is teaching by the academics who wasn't any day in the court. So if he has no any practice in law, so it's not possible to explain how this system works. So I remember, just to remind that, I remember my first class on the civil procedure law. I didn't completely understand anything. And I just understand the system of civil procedure when I represent first my client in the civil court. So of course, this is not a question of just the system of law. Of course, system of law is not so complicated. We try to develop it according to international standards. But the issue that the university needs to give students the real law, which exists not only in books, but it exists in real practice. To ensure the promotion of academic integrity standards, 11 universities formed Academic Integrity League that works on the implementation of the better academic policies, including the development of academic integrity codes, improvement of criteria grading standards, ensuring that there is enough choice of disciplines for students. And this is one of the main aim of this institution. And this is my privilege to share with you information that before I had become a Vice Minister of Education, I just was head of the Academic Integrity League because I worked for the university. And in order to implement anti-corruption policies at university, raises awareness about the corruption, increase the level of trust to the system of Kazakhstan education, the Ministry of Education implemented the anti-corruption project Office Adal Bilim, so which translated as the fair knowledge. This project was established, and this office helped us to develop legal institutions, not legal institution, but law university in Kazakhstan to promote and to ensure that their education is fair according to academic integrity standards. Major Kazakhstani universities that have law schools collaborate through academic associations under the Ministry of Education and Science, which works as a project management unit. So it means that Ministry of Education, of course, issue like a legal standard, not legal standards, I mean educational standards. But we promote these educational standards with project management units. So for each direction of education, we have separate project management unit, which held by one of the universities in Kazakhstan. And this system of cooperation between the ministry and the universities help us to have feedback on our educational regulations on the one hand, and on the other hand, this is we believe that good instrument to implement our regulations. Universities perform joint projects focuses on the development of education programs, career developments, and continuous learning and skill development. Also, this association reviews and develops teaching materials, which are at the law classes at Kazakhstani schools and universities. Despite recent developments that positively influence the sphere of legal education in Kazakhstan, education system faces some challenges. So the first and the foremost challenge is the quality of educational programs, which highly depends on human resources and quality of teaching materials. which are used in the education process. Due to the high number of education institutions that implement law programs, 71, the average quality of faculty needs to be significantly improved. Changing standards is quite common for most professions in the modern world, and legal education is not an exception, of course. Despite having a very high supply of legal professions to the Kazakhstani market, particular sectors of economy and some regions of the country where salaries are not so competitive suffer from the lack of lawyers. For example, most of the graduates who spend a large sum of money paying for higher education would prefer to change their areas of specialization rather than work in the governmental sector due to low salaries. Promotion of academic integrity, first against corruption, improvement of the cooperation between universities, employers and professional attorneys, development of national certification standards, and continuous development and restraint of legal professions are the main directions of the development of legal education that we promote. And according to the law on the legal practice and legal aid, what was adopted 2 years ago, continued professional development is mandatory for all practicing lawyers. Me, as well as many of my colleagues, support this idea and believe that a good lawyer is a lawyer who is able to develop and adapt to all recent trends and changes. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Miras. We appreciate your comments. Let me turn the floor over to Hussain Hadi.
Thank you very much, David. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. I'm going to be focusing specifically on legal tech skills. So bear with me. I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, so we're here to talk about legal tech skills specifically. It's fair to say that over the last 10 years, it's become mainstream thinking that lawyers have to be familiar with the latest developments in legal technology. I've included 2 quotes here from the American Bar Association, the Law Society of England and Wales. You will find similar statements in bar associations across the world. As lawyers, we have to be familiar with the technology that will make us be more efficient and will give better value to our clients. Now, saying that, the legal profession has been a bit reluctant to really appreciate that perhaps there is a problem with legal tech competency. Lawyers are inherently very good at understanding the law, applying the law, providing their clients with commercial solutions, but perhaps there isn't a strong push to do that in the quickest and most efficient way. I'll share with you a very interesting article that came out in 2013 that was quite controversial. The corporate counsel at Kia Motors in America, he created a tech proficiency test, and he asked lawyers that wanted to win Kia's business to complete this test. So this tech proficiency test was supposed to take an hour, and it covered things like adapting PDFs, searching documents, kind of things that often we will give to paralegals or support lawyers. So 9 law firms sent their senior associates to try to win this business and do this test. Every single law firm failed the test the first time, and it caused quite a controversy and a discussion. What does tech proficiency look like? What is the minimum level of tech proficiency? The reason this conversation is important is, do in-house lawyers feel that their law firm is using the most efficient tools, the most efficient methods to solve their business problems? And if not, then there's a gap in education there. It's not enough to know the law and apply the law, but you need to be using tools to get the answers quickly. So I think that this trend towards finding solutions quickly to be more efficient, I think that COVID-19 is accelerating that. This idea that we need digital transformation, that we need to be more agile. But what do we actually mean by digital transformation? I think it's fair to say that COVID-19 has forced us as a legal community to embrace collaboration tools, to use remote working tools, to perhaps work independently. So these trends are being accelerated here. So if I'm talking about digital transformation, I'm talking about using technology to make processes more efficient. That could mean blockchain, big data, cloud computing, AI. But as lawyers, we need to be proactive in understanding these concepts and applying them in our day-to-day work. An interesting article from Richard Susskind, the godfather of legal technology. His first book called The End of Lawyers was with a question mark, thankfully not an exclamation mark, talks about the 5 stages in adapting to COVID-19. We are now in the emergent stage. We're now, and there's a prediction here that we will never go back to the traditional way of working. All the trends we're seeing with being flexible, using technology tools, these trends will stay and will be accelerated. So if we take a step back, what do we mean? What do we mean by legal technology? So lawyers obviously use Microsoft Office, familiar with using to some extent e-discovery tools, but we've now got a whole new ecosystem of legal tech. And in some ways, it's quite intimidating as a lawyer to know where to start. What should I be using? What should I be focusing on? So these statistics might look a little bit scary, but these are quite conservative. There are estimates that 22% of a lawyer's job, 35% of a law clerk's job can be automated. 39% of jobs in the longer term stand to be automated. Now, we're talking here about repetitive, commoditized work, proofreading documents, filing, things that really, as lawyers, we should not be wasting our time on. We should be providing that high-value strategic advice, which makes a big difference to our clients. So let's take a global perspective on this. There was a very interesting study that was held at the IBA Building the Law Firm of the Future conference, some really good research done by Robert Millard. You could see here, they asked people understanding the opportunities and challenges. So for most lawyers, you could see from that chart, most people it's a difficult understanding what are the opportunities and challenges from technology available. Are we comfortable investing in this technology? Is it proven? Where do I start? And this is an issue that a lot of the law societies around the world are trying to help people with, trying to do a map or a survey of legal tech proficiency in the market, find out where those education skills gap are, and then providing advice on what lawyers should be using. So you can see here there's a difference between smaller and larger law firms when it comes to the type of technology they're using. And in this market, budget should not be a barrier to someone using technology efficiently. It shouldn't be something that only larger law firms are investing in and then smaller law firms are left behind. It should be something that's taught broadly across all universities, and people should be confident in using this technology. I'd also like to refer to another survey that took place, talking about some of the trends when it comes to legal technology. So you can see here, thinking about the next 3 to 5 years, is there a technology trend that will make a significant change in the legal profession? A lot of people mention the cloud, the idea that no matter where you are, whether you're at home, you will be able to access your client files. You'll be able to do all these processes online. You don't need to go to the office. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, automating contracts. These are things that should become mainstream and are expected to become more mainstream. You can see there, what are the biggest barriers? The biggest one is change, users' acceptance of change. We need to get away from this idea that we should leave technology to the tech people. This is something that we should harness in our everyday work. And this is a cultural change that hopefully we will implement at a university level and CLPD level, that we're simply using technology to give our clients better value, to get there faster, to make it cheaper, so we can focus on that high value advice where we make a fundamental difference. Taking an in-house perspective, the Association of Corporate Counsel does an annual survey of chief legal officers, and they talk about what are the challenges that are facing in-house lawyers. So you can see their business leaders are talking about compliance, keeping up to date, and you can see at the bottom, leadership and business skills are the most desirable skills that chief legal officers want to develop. Of course, chief legal officers are also turning to technology to be more efficient. We've all heard at various conferences the idea that we have to do more for less. There's budget restrictions. We need to be more efficient. We need to use artificial intelligence to perform tasks more effectively. We need to use e-discovery tools to look at thousands, if not millions of documents. We need to use proofreading tools to save us having to check cross citations and references in contracts. We need to use document automation tools to do simple agreements like NDAs quicker without spending time replicating work, copying and pasting. So I'd like to draw your attention to what some particular jurisdictions have done to tackle this legal tech skills gap. I'll start off with Singapore. Singapore first did a survey of legal practitioners in Singapore. They actually looked at how comfortable are people with using legal technology? What technology are they using at the moment? Where are the gaps? So most people looked at technology, we wanted to increase productivity for better legal services. We wanted to save time. But one of the challenges is that there's often a gap between your expectations and reality. A lot of the times the technology has overpromised and underdelivered, which leaves the lawyer a little bit, he doesn't know where to start. He's like, well, look, I don't want to invest a lot of money in tech tools that are not proven. So I know I should be more efficient, but what does that actually mean? Now, this is where Singapore took a step further than most other law societies or associations around the world. They actually created a program called Techcelerate. So what they've done is they've identified what are the skills gap, what should be a baseline level of technology. They've defined that. They've said, as a minimum, you should have a practice management tool. You should have a contract automation tool. They've then gone a step further. They've actually outlined which vendors you should be looking at, which they've vetted, and then they even provide you with funding so that you can buy that technology. So they've gone a step further. They've not just educated you, they've identified what are the tools you should be using, and they've provided funding for those tools. Now, that's quite more advanced in other jurisdictions, but I can show you what most people tend to be doing. So the Law Society of England and Wales has a very sophisticated approach to legal technology. They have a really good program in place. They're putting a lot of studies out there. This one I'm referring to here looks at legal tech adoption in the UK. And talks about what are the tools people tend to be using. Most people are looking at contract management, contract automation. E-discovery is quite an established tool among the larger law firms, but there are still barriers to adopting technology. Most people, once again, are waiting to see what is proven, what is cost effective. So there's still a wait and see approach. There's still barriers to legal tech adoption. And you could see there, same challenges apply with in-house lawyers as well. Lexis Nexis, we did a study on legal tech adoption in the UK. You can see there 57% of GCs believe that technology has already increased their efficiency, 60 believe that technology will increase the accuracy of the legal work. For me, those statistics are a little bit disturbing. That means that 40% of people do not believe that technology will make a difference to their work in the coming years. A lot of people feel that technology has not made a difference. And to be honest, I think the legal tech world, all the vendors like Lexis, Nexis, mine, where have we gone wrong? I mean, we have these great tools. Why is it that some in-house lawyers are underwhelmed with the offerings out there? And how do we make sure that you're using the right tools? Bearing in mind, there's 1,000 legal tech providers out there across the world, and a lot of them have only appeared in the last 5 years. So the track records aren't proven. So as an in-house lawyer, as a private practice lawyer, where should you start? How do you start? It's quite intimidating. 1 in 5 GCs have used no usage. 2 in 3 lack the understanding. 71% of GCs say budget is a barrier. So it's one thing to talk about teaching legal technology awareness in university, but once you're out in the real world, how do you even determine which tech to use? How do you make sure that you're getting value for money? That's not an easy one. And there's an interplay between in-house lawyers and private practice lawyers. A lot of in-house lawyers look to their law firms to help them on that journey. And this is where, as law firms, we can help. We should be researching the technology. We should be helping our in-house lawyers on that journey. I think the last final country I'll draw attention to is the Law Society of Scotland. They did a really interesting report. Firstly, looking at what are the skills gaps when it comes to legal tech at a very broad level. How many people are using desktop compared to smartphones? How many people are you doing online filing? How many people have experienced working with remote court technology? The next step they did is identifying the challenges. So they said here that we need technology to become part of mainstream legal education. We need to improve collaboration between organizations, technology companies, and all stakeholders. Technology should be used to help people be more responsive, streamlining processes, and improve customer service. It can increase productivity. So I really like this report because they take it at a very baseline level and they work out what is the objectives, where is the skills gap, where do we need to be. So that's just a very quick perspective of how different jurisdictions are dealing with the challenge of legal tech. But for me, the good news is you don't have to be an expert on legal tech to get started. The starting point is understanding your business. So these two quotes, one from an in-house lawyer and one from an international law firm, represent how we should be looking at legal tech. Get your house in order, understand your pain points, combine legal tech with human knowledge, And that's where you'll win. You don't have to be a legal tech expert, but you need to understand your processes and see how you can be more efficient. And I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hussain. Now we will move to the panel discussion phase of the program. And I'd like to direct the first question to Sarah. Sarah, some critics have noted that legal education does not provide the substantive content, practice skills, and broad exposure to the humanities to adequately prepare lawyers for operating in an increasingly complex environment. Can you identify potential gaps in traditional legal education? And can you recommend changes in curriculum content and teaching methodologies to prepare lawyers for modern practice?
Thank you, David. Yeah, it's a fascinating question, isn't it? And in fact, it's one that the International Bar Association, the IBA, are currently investigating. So I'm chair of a section of the IBA, and we are currently undertaking a research exercise where we've researched with over 400 global law schools, and we are developing, in conjunction with the law firm management section of the IBA, a blueprint for global legal education. And obviously we would be delighted to work with the Vice Minister of Education in Kazakhstan, and it would be wonderful to get your input into that. From my personal perspective, where I see the big gaps, I still think there is a gap around transactions. So at the moment, most legal education systems are very focused on core black letter law, contract law, tort law, land law, whereas in fact, what people need to understand in practice is how do I litigate? How do I convey a piece of land? So it's the how bit that's missing. And in fact, you know, most law firms now, 70% of trainees in the UK will go into a very commercial environment without having, and they need to know what a banking documentation looks like. They need to understand mergers and acquisitions. So that transactional component for me is one very important part. The second important thing that I think is missing is most legal education is very domestic in its focus. And I think an international perspective is where most work for most lawyers is moving. Most lawyers are involved at some extent or other in cross-border transactions. And that's what BARBRI is working with the Academy of Law at the Astana International Financial Centre to develop. So we're delighted to work with you at the AIFC to bring global international legal qualifications by delivering to your markets, whether it be legal English qualifications or whether it be access to the American bar or access to qualifications in England and Wales. I think it's important that people have access to international global legal qualifications.
Thank you, Sarah. Miras, would you like to comment on this same question?
Thank you for your question. So I'd like to add 2 points. The first point that I believe that some areas of law cannot be taught just by academics. So we need to involve more professionals to do so. For instance, Sarah mentioned about the merger and acquisition. So I believe that merger and acquisition perfectly is teaching by the professionals because they do that every single day. And of course, probably in future, David, so we will have not the teachers, but computers which teach law students merger and acquisition more effectively than people. Why? Because as you see from the market, so we have some even computer programs which do merger and acquisition faster and effectively than people. So this is another challenge for the legal profession and legal education as well. And this first point. Second point, that I believe that we need to involve more practitioners on the exams for at the university level. So, for instance, if academics teach just, I don't know, civil law on the second year of a study, and later in the final stage when they students pass exam on civil law, the same students actually make an assessment. I believe that this is not good practice because by making assessment on the final stage, we make an assessment not only law students, but the quality of teaching. So that's why we need to involve more practitioners in the final examination at the law schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Miras. In the interest of time, we're going to move on to question 2. I'm going to direct it to you, Miras, first, and that is, what shortfalls do you see in current regimes for regulating lawyers, emphasizing competencies frameworks, practitioner admissions requirements, and the recognition of foreign lawyers to practice? And what changes in regulatory systems and practices would you suggest?
Thank you for your question. So I perceive that from my previous background in academic area that when I just cooperated with some law firms in Kazakhstan, with state bodies, I just perceived that they have different actually expectations from lawyers. So some of them just said me that they need to understand the law and to have good English language skills. And there's others that said me that they need to have good lawyers with analytical skills, but of course, in respect of their concrete areas of law, that it's not required to know, for instance, merger and acquisition. They need just to have a very good foundations of law, and later they will train in practice. So I see that expectations of the employers, not only in Kazakhstan, but in different countries, because I used to work in different countries, I see that expectations are really different. What we actually expect from our employers and how we cooperate with them. So first of all, we have national frameworks of education. So in these frameworks, we establish general competencies, what we need to train all actually students in Kazakhstan. This is one point. Second point, that we have standards of legal education in Kazakhstan. And these standards of legal education are designed by employers, association of bar associations and other association of lawyers. And we believe that education programs in Kazakhstan, they need to meet these expectations. How we do that? Under the Ministry of Education, we have so-called like list of education programs of the whole country. And in order to be in a list, so they need to meet minimal requirements. One of the requirements to meet expectations of the association and bar associations and association of lawyers. So we believe that we need to implement and develop this instrument. Thank you.
Thank you, Miras. Hussain, same question.
Look, for me, I really want to take on Sarah's point, which is a lot of the time we're only teaching the black letter law, but at the end of the day, we need to recognize that lawyers exist to help businesses solve their business problems. If you speak to any in-house lawyer around the world, they want their business problem solved. They don't really particularly care about a lecture on the law or how the law works. They need to understand how they get their job done. They need a yes or no answer. So we need to change that mindset with lawyers, that you're there to have your clients get their business problem solved in the quickest and most efficient way possible. So as a law firm, we need to be always looking at how can we be innovative, how can we be creative, and we need to be open to working in a different way, whether that's working with technologists, management consultants, operational experts. So a really good example is Freshfields usually win the European Innovative Lawyer Award each year from the Financial Times, because they take their secondees and they put them in their clients' offices, and they have a remit to come back when they've identified the client's problem and build a solution that can solve that. So for me, the legal education gap here is really taking a very practical, proactive approach to solving client problems by any means necessary.
Thank you, Hussain. Let's move on to question 3. And Hussain, we'll stick with you. We will address this question to you first. And that is, with the globalization of trade and finance, cross-border transactions, and the emergence of new technologies, coupled with the need for more cooperation among governments and private sector companies, what changes must law firms, barristers' chambers, and individual lawyers make to remain competitive? And how can core or continuing legal education help?
Thanks, David. Firstly, we all recognize we live in a globalized world. And I think one of the things the AIFC does really well is recognizing that we need to bridge the gap between common law and civil law. You need to be able to wear both hats in a globalized world. Even if you're in a civil law jurisdiction, you're going to have to be dealing with common law practitioners, and you're going to have to be comfortable with both. as I mentioned in my presentation, you have to be familiar with using and deploying legal technology. If you're working across offices, you need to be familiar with using e-discovery tools, using collaboration tools. So you need to be comfortable with deploying technology to work more efficiently, to put your client at the heart of everything you do. And when it comes to education, how we can help this, we need to get a global perspective. At the end of the day, legal tech is agnostic. It shouldn't be specific to one jurisdiction, to one country. And what I'm really glad to see with the AIFC is that they're encouraging collaboration across jurisdictions, across different stakeholders, whether it's tech incubation units, whether it's universities. So I hope that's something we see accelerating and continuing.
Thank you very much, Hussain. Sarah, same question. Sarah, unmute, please.
For me, sorry, David, thank you. For me, the opportunity here is for allowing our younger practitioners, those associates who are just joining our practices, to really have opportunities beyond their own firm. And again, I applaud the AIFC for having such a global perspective on your operations. I think it's about opportunities. So I see a huge number of young lawyers coming through the International Bar Association, meeting lawyers from other jurisdictions, having that opportunity to develop an understanding of how people do things in different jurisdictions, I think is key. And I really support the Academy for your endeavours in that regard. I think it's also an opportunity to continue to have lifelong learning opportunities. Lifelong opportunities don't just see admission to your local bar as being the end of your journey. It is a lifelong activity. You can always develop, you can always learn more. I think the opportunity that people of my generation are now getting involved in events such as today, it just goes to show how much I've had to develop and how much I've had to learn. And I'm in my 50s. So, you know, it's a really big opportunity for me to learn how to do something new. And I think having that mindset of development, and that's where I see the Academy having such an important part to play in the development in Kazakhstan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Well, many thanks to our three panelists for their insights today. To wrap up today's session, let me offer a few final remarks. We have explored today various observations on the knowledge and skills that modern lawyers really need to effectively advise and represent their clients. We looked at current legal education content and teaching methodologies. We heard about the current status of legal education in Kazakhstan and Central Asia and some opportunities for development. And we considered how new technologies are required for lawyers to operate more efficiently, thereby creating additional client value. The bottom line is that there are gaps in traditional legal education that must be addressed in light of these new realities. Perhaps the starting point is to consider a holistic view of the global legal system, which consists of multiple components. So to drive the goals of international business, various legal systems, whether based in common or civil law or international principles, must operate as cohesive, interdependent institutions. Universities, government ministries, regulators, and specialized technology and other support services really must work collaboratively to carry the torch forward. Our collective goal should be establishing new models of legal education that are designed to foster legal system excellence and the ongoing development of the global rule of law. At the AIFC Academy of Law, we look forward to finding new ways of providing legal education opportunities that are at the intersection of law, business, and professional ethics. We aim to provide legal professionals with equal access to work in the AIFC jurisdiction, regardless of differences in their academic or experiential backgrounds. Our intent is to create an inclusive learning environment where we can exchange knowledge and ideas with a view toward contributing to the AIFC's global preeminence. So we've come to the end of our time frame. Unfortunately, we cannot conduct Q&A, but I would urge our participants to send your questions over to us, and we'll do the best we can to allocate them to the appropriate speaker who can respond by email. Thanks so much for our distinguished panelists for your extraordinarily insightful and relevant comments. And with that, we bid you farewell. Have a great evening, everyone, and thank you all for your participation. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.